Hello and welcome to Casa Alma, where we're going to go behind the scenes of making a 3D animated film. I'm Siobhan Gannon, and I'm a third-year 3D animation student.
And I'm Jessica McDonald, and I'm a fourth-year 3D digital design student.
So our goal of this film was to capture the theme of family bonds while highlighting Cuban culture, and I also wanted to connect to my personal family history. These are the steps that we went through when making the film that we'll go into more detail with later.
And this is the software that we used throughout the film.
The story itself is about a girl and her grandmother bonding through the exploration of the grandmother's Cuban house, and here is a screenshot from it. So first we did our research. I got these pictures of my grandparents. Some of them we got from Cuba. This was very important to me, that we wanted to include certain features of her face and her body.
And here are some interiors that we were influenced by when we were building out the environment. And then on the right, we also have the mosaic town from Cuba that heavily inspired the color palette.
So we were very inspired, obviously, by our trip to Cuba, which we got to do through CAD Honors. Here's our group. I was very lucky to meet my family down in Cuba that I'd never met before, and I learned more about my grandmother, who unfortunately passed away before I could meet her. And we also learned a lot about Cuban family and how they have a strong sense of connection just by talking to strangers on the street.
And then visually, I was really inspired throughout Cuba by the art and architecture there. They had a lot of bright colors and interesting shapes that we tried to use when we were making this film.
So first we start with pre-production. And here you can see a schedule with all the specific tasks that we had to get done by the end of the semester. We only had a few weeks to get this done.
This is a character sheet of our two main characters.
Here you can see the storyboards, which gives us an initial insight into how the film will look and specifically how the shots will be composed and get an initial flow of the story. Up next, we dive into production. So first we start with modeling everything, which you can see is creating these 3D objects, and then we UV map them, which is basically projecting a 2D image onto the surface. And on that, we can add textures, the colors, metal, shininess. And then we can rig any characters or anything that needs to move by adding a skeleton and joint that the animator can control.
Here are the assets that we created. We went for a really rounded, stylized look, and we wanted the environment to be a really fun, playful vibe. And we've got the two finished characters on the left. They're modeled and textured, and then handed off to Siobhan for the rigging.
So here we can see the rig itself moving. Those controls can be moved and then keys can be set. So this is used for keyframe animation, which is where we define those key points of the character, and the computer can extrapolate the information in between to get that fluid sense of movement. So the phase of animation, we start off with an animatic. So the storyboards from before are timed out to get an initial flow of the film. Then we block out all the models, which is basically no in-between, so it's key poses going from one to the next. Once that looks all set, we spline it, which is smoothing up the animation to get more fluid movement. When everything is all set, we can start rendering it. Here you can see that kind of evolution, starting with the animatic, going into blocking where everything's a little chunky, animating, smoothing it out with splining, and then rendering it out for that final image.
And then in post-production, we clean everything up and make it look really nice and visually pleasing. So that includes putting in some light sources, rendering out the frames as a ton of images, and then putting it together as a smooth animation, and then color correcting and color grading it so that the colors look decent and really nice. And you can see the before and after in these two pictures of the post-production process. And as you can see, it looks like a lot prettier and cleaner once it's gone through post-production. And here is what the finished animation looks like with everything done to it.
And with that, we have the final sound. We worked with a composer to get nice music, and we add those final touches. And from there, we can submit it to a film festival. We submitted to a few and have been accepted into one so far. And once those are all over, everything will be available online. And that is everything. Thank you so much.